Chris Scalzer here with
Matt Howell.
And featuring super special guest
B. Garner.
The Film Bee herself is here of the In Their League podcast and whole website. I am very excited, Matt. This is a very big get for us. We're very excited to have her on the show. Before we start everything off, if I may, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Miss? Introduce us to, and our listeners to you. What are you all about?
Well, yes, I am B. Garner, aka The Film Bee. You may know me from Twitter. I'm sort of the editor and founder of In Their Own League, which is a website all dedicated to women in film. So I get around a bit. Let's just say that.
Well, we're very excited to have you on the big show. This has been a desire of mine for a long time. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us. So,
no worries.
Well, okay, good. It's been a bit of a challenge getting the show rolling this morning, so I appreciate your patience. So on this episode of The First Run, the three of us are going to discuss one of my most anticipated films of 2020, which is Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. I'm very excited that we finally got a chance to catch up with this. We're also going to spend a few minutes talking about The Last Thing He Wanted, and I'm going to avoid any puns with that title as we discuss that film. We'll also share what we think are our 5 favorite films with a message that were released between 2010 and 2019. And of course, as always, we'll let you know the big releases on physical media this upcoming Tuesday, including your streaming and straight-to-DVD picks of the week. And let's start everything off with a clip from Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always.
Do you have a place to stay tonight? I know you came from far away.
Yeah.
Where are you going to stay?
I don't know, I was just gonna go to a hotel or something.
Okay. Hotels are pretty expensive. Do you have the money for that?
I'll figure it out.
We work with volunteers that can help you with a place to stay. I can reach out to them if you want me to.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. Who came with you today?
My cousin.
Have they been supportive?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell me what led to your decision to terminate the pregnancy?
I'm just not ready to be a mom.
So, Matt, why don't you tell the fine folks at home, and now I'm assuming abroad internationally, since we have our international guest, Matt, what is Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always all about?
So Autumn is a young teenager who unexpectedly becomes pregnant. She attempts to have an abortion in her home state of Pennsylvania, but she encounters resistance. So she and her cousin scrape some money together, travel down to New York, and attempt to get an abortion down there without their parents or finding out.
There you go. So, B, as we open the shows, I usually ask a question here, and sometimes they're a little combative. I try and present 2 different options for you, and then let you run from there. So as our special guest, I'll open it up to you. And you can say, Chris, shut up, and then just tell us what you think first. But Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. Is it a thought-provoking story of the challenges that women face here and well executed and crafted, or is it just an inartful attempt at a message film? What are your thoughts?
That's actually a very good question. I think it is quite a thought-provoking film. I think the sort of the lack of backstory that we have is actually quite intriguing to me because it's left up to us to fill in the blanks, really. And I think the information that we are supplied it's so vague, but at the same time it shows so much about the characters that we spend time with. We see the world through their eyes, and it's a perspective that we don't often see in cinema, which I found very refreshing. And I also found it never felt preachy to me. It never felt like it was trying to necessarily make a political statement. It was just showing the sort of struggles that some young women face in America, which I found eye-opening because I wasn't aware that it was the case, and that it varies from state to state. So as an outsider, it gave me a sort of a unique insight to a world that I'm not familiar with.
That is interesting. I hadn't even considered it through that prism, that watching it from someone who isn't obviously here, then has to deal with the fact that there are different laws and rules from state to state, some states working actively to make it illegal, within the boundaries of the law, of course. But it's an interesting perspective. Matt, what do you think?
Well, I think B's much smarter than we are, so I don't know if I need to say anything at this point. Most people don't think of the Northeast, which Pennsylvania is in, obviously, as generally a liberal place. So, you really don't think, or I didn't really think about how, it would be difficult for somebody in Pennsylvania to go out and get an abortion. But I would kind of piggyback onto what B said as far as this film doesn't seem to come in with an immediate agenda. It really is all about the expectations and that you bring into it because of so much of it is not filled in. And really, it's kind of interesting. Watching this film, I would wonder what people were necessarily thinking about Autumn and her character when you're presented with this, scenario as to how she got into this situation. As the film progresses, and there's one key scene later in the film that kind of lays it all out, how your expectations or your preconceived notions were kind of, shifted up until that point.
I agree. I think that there is so much emotion and trauma revealed in those brief minutes. The reveal of the physical and sexual, abuse that she has endured that brought her kind of to this moment. And as B had stated too, there's not a lot of information passed to you throughout the film. You're kind of let to figure things out kind of on your own. Like, I personally am convinced that the gentleman who plays her dad is her stepfather. I go with that because the attitude he seems to have towards her, the age difference between her and her siblings, and then I start to wonder if he had any role in that trauma specifically as well. So it's very, as we said, it is thought-provoking. And what I really appreciate about it also, as B said, how it shows a lot of the environment that these women have to navigate through their own eyes. But how much it focuses just not on the abhorrent lengths women have to go to obtain an abortion in this country, but the experience of them, if I will, this is probably not the right term, but the air quotes micro assaults and indignities that they have to suffer from day to day, right? The grocery store clerk manager guy, the guy in the subway, the creeper new friend, the guy in the bus, right? How she zooms in, the director, writer Eliza Hitmann zooms in just to see his hand touching her shoulder, just illustrating the fact that men seem to have this, just sad reality that they have this kind of taciturn ownership of a woman's body, right? That they can kind of do what they want to. And the way she relays that stuff was just as upsetting and startling to me. Not that I wasn't aware of it, but just to kind of illustrate it on film, to highlight these inappropriate actions. So I think that some may not appreciate them being as such. So I think that Hitmann did a fantastic job. And I also want to praise Sidney Flanagan as Autumn. I think she is fantastic in this role. How she kind of drifts almost throughout the first half of this film, right? Trying to figure out what she's going to do and deal with the consequences of what has occurred. That particular moment during the interview is just, it's heartbreaking. It really is a stunning, I think, performance by her. From what I understand, this is her first film, and she's also a singer-songwriter, but I am really eager to see what she does next, along with the writer-director Eliza Hitmann. This was just a stunning work for me, and really lived up to my expectations, if not surpassing them. B, is there anything else you'd like to add here?
Well, yes, I would like to. I mean, I was sort of piggyback off that. I think there's a rawness to her performance. You do get the sense that she is this authentic person. Like, I fully believe that she exists in this world in which the film is taking place. The scene that really affected me was early on in the film where she's trying to induce a miscarriage and she's punching her stomach, and then the camera slowly sort of pans down to show that, and it's so impactful in such a way that you feel for her. There's no internal monologue that happens, there's no voiceover narrative, but we connect with her by the power of her acting. And I think it's just, in a way, the lack of expression on her face, which manages to convey so much emotion, because you can see that she's internalizing all of her pain and anguish as a young woman going through this, tragedy in her life alone. But I also like how the film explores female friendships in a way that we don't really see, like the idea of women supporting each other. And it's just the small moments that the two girls have, the moment where they sort of share the pastry in the diner, and it's just like a tender small little moment, and it's like the first time that they've actually had a chance to relax and be themselves together. Such a interesting way to show that relationship without having to rely so much on dialogue.
No, I agree. Matt?
Yeah, I don't know what else to say. I mean, really, it's a powerful film, but it's at the same time, it's a small film. It's an intimate film, so we could pick apart this thing for the rest of the show. But I guess my final thoughts would be just I would recommend that everybody go see this thing, because it's something that is a film I was aware of, and I'll be flat out honest. I knew very little going into this, but I knew Chris was really excited about it, which is usually a big red flag for me. But I ended up enjoying it quite a bit, and I'm glad he selected it. Unlike something we may talk about later.
Yeah, we'll get there. No, I agree. For me, this is the best film I've seen so far this year, hands down.
Oh wow!
It's also faint praise. It's a low bar.
It is. Yeah.
That's true.
Nothing has come out, basically.
Yeah, I mean, what the highlights would be The Invisible Man, I think, at this point, maybe. And for cheesy fun, Underwater, the Kristen Stewart, Cthulhu film. I mean, really, it's been... But I don't want to... Listen, I don't want to say that. I don't mean to diminish this film at all. This is a work of art and that deals with an exceptionally difficult subject, but does it very well. You're right, and as B said, it's not preachy, right? We're not shove it into your face, women's body autonomy now, don't stop the oppression, and but all that message is in here, but it's told exceptionally well and artfully well. And like I said, I'm giving Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always an A. It's the best film I've seen all year. B, where are you coming down?
I second that. I think it deserves an A. I mean, it's up there with The Assistant for me, which was another film that really sort of taps into the same sort of themes of the struggles of women in contemporary society. So out of those two movies, I mean, it's hard to pick my number one, but I do feel that Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always is definitely up there at the top of the list for this year. So yeah, A, I completely agree with.
Yeah, I think The Assistant's on our radar too, Matt. I got to check that out. That features Julia Garner, who was in The Americans. She plays a woman, right, who is sexually harassed at a company. If that's if I'm understanding that right. Yeah, I'm meaning to catch up with that. Thank you for the reminder, Matt. Where do you come down?
So I'm going to give it an A as well. I think it is so far the best film we've seen, or at least I've seen this year. Although hopefully that we start to see more quality content coming out very soon. But yeah, it's I think what I appreciate most about it is it's kind of like it just presents the film as it is, and like you're left to, you just kind of feel everything that these girls are going through, and it's certainly something that the empathy of it just kind of washes over you. So it's something that I think everybody should watch, and I'm glad it's available for streaming.
There you go. So Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always is available on all of your streaming platforms for a quick rental. Well worth your time. The $5-6, it will not be wasted. Please check it out. If you've had a chance to see it already, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Shoot us an email at feedback@thefirstrun.com. Coming up, we're going to spend a few minutes talking about what's coming up in physical media this upcoming Tuesday, June 23rd. And listen, there are no big releases. There's not a single new film, really, that's getting a home video release. So it's going to be all catalog stuff. So let's hear a clip, though, from one of my favorite horror films from quite a long time ago.
You shouldn't have done that, my dear.
It is Kathy.
It's Kathy's body under the wax. I knew it. I knew it all the time.
You, my Marie Antoinette, for I will give you eternal life.
Said, of course, is the legendary Vincent Price in House of Wax. Warner Archive is releasing this on disc. Again, it's been released a few times, but includes the 3D version as well, and as well as a special feature, the 1933 Warner Brothers feature Mystery of the Wax Museum. But probably, Matt, the film I'm most excited about getting its physical release. My second favorite film of 2019, and you get enough booze in me, you could probably convince me to make it number one, depending on how emotional I'm feeling. Of course, Criterion is releasing Portrait of a Lady on Fire, a brand new 4K master of that, a new conversation with the director Celine Sciamma, with film critic Dana Stevens, new interviews with our lead actors, interview with the cinematographer, and more. Another film that just absolutely floored me with its beauty. B, I heard a visceral reaction out of you. What are you're a fan of Portrait there?
Oh, I love that film so much. It's just gorgeous. Just absolutely beautiful. And every time I watch it, the tears are streaming down my face.
I know. I said on the show, too, I probably gasped out loud 4 or 5 times while watching that thing, just by the sheer beauty of it. So now you can pick it up there from Criterion. I'm very excited about that. I was really hoping this may be Criterion's first 4K release, but unfortunately not. We'll say someday, maybe. Criterion is also giving us Tokyo Olympiad, the impressionistic portrait of the 1964 Tokyo Summer Olympics. Includes a brand new 4K restoration, audio commentary from 2001 from film historian Peter Coe, a new introduction by Coe as well, 8 minutes of additional material, and more. Arrow is releasing Dream Demon from 1988, the horror film about a young woman about to be married and begins having terrifying dreams about demons. When she wakes, however, those demons are very real. A brand new 2K restoration from the original camera negative. Director's cut and original theatrical versions included as well. A brand new scene select audio commentary, and more. Kino Lorber is giving us Murder by Decree, directed by Bob Clark. Our favorite there, Matt, director returns, right? Who gave us Porky's, which we just did as part of our 80s sex comedy marathon. Oh boy. And of course the classics Black Christmas and A Christmas Story as well. This one is Christopher Plummer, James Mason, Donald Sutherland, Genevieve Buell, John Gielgud. It's a Sherlock Holmes movie where he tracks down Jack the Ripper. The Abbott Costello film Africa Screams, which absolutely has to be problematic in this day and age, is the Abbott Costello movie where they pass themselves off as safari hunters and unwittingly get caught up in a web of diamond thieves. A newly restored from the original 35mm nitrate film elements, so that's probably a little dangerous. Audio commentary by noted author, Abbott and Costello historian Ron Palumbo. The rub-down sketch from the live television show from '53, and more. Scream Factory is giving us The Spider, also known as Earth vs. Spider. The, I'm not going to say classic, Spider horror film. It's a brand new 2K restoration of that film. A new audio commentary as well. And it includes the Mystery Science Theater episode, Earth vs. Spider, as a special feature, which may be worth picking it up just for that. And then a couple films actually getting released on June 26th as well. Severin is releasing The Beast Must Die, the Peter Cushing monster film, as well as Fulci for Fake, a documentary about the controversial Italian horror filmmaker Lucio Fulci. And then a couple music releases. In Excess, Live Baby Live at Wembley is getting a 4K release with a restoration in 4K, as well as a Dolby Atmos soundtrack. And then Depeche Mode's Spirits in the Forest, which followed their Global Spirit tour. It's a digipack with a Blu-ray and a CD. Your straight-to-DVD pick of the week, Matt, is going to be Beyond Justice. A new release of Anthony Giannini's action thriller. Beyond Justice stars Kevin Smith, not that Kevin Smith, This one was in Xena and then Hercules. Angela Dochin and Jennifer Rubin, but not that Jennifer Rubin, not the reporter. A gritty ex-cop, John Lawless, which is just chef's kiss of a name, played by Kevin Smith, and his partner, sexy Jodie Keane, because she has to be sexy, are private investigators. Now, their new client, the mysterious Lana Vitale, played by Jennifer Rubin, again, not the reporter, is coming on to John and coming in between John and Jodie. Someone murdered her husband, and John Lawless, love that name, is going to discover the truth, ensuring that no one is beyond justice. Matt, what should we be streaming this week?
So I actually have several things to talk about here. So first, which I know you're not, Chris, but for those of us who are still subscribing to cable, and if you're an Xfinity Comcast customer, you have access to Peacock, which is NBC Universal's streaming service for free because they're owned by NBC Universal. I was poking around on there the other day. You can actually access all of Hitchcock's films. They're there, as well as all of the Universal monster films.
Really?
Even all the terrible ones. Like when you start getting into like the 50s, 60s stuff, all that stuff is there as well. So it has the potential for, if you're sitting around looking for something to watch, there's a lot there that you should go out and check out. But if you don't have Peacock, which I don't think is available to the broader public yet until the middle of July, Apollo 11, the documentary from 2019 about the Apollo 11 moon landing, which is actually quite good, is available on Prime and Hulu for streaming.
Nice. You know, I have now HBO Max, right,
Yes.
which is free as part of my program, and the fact because of my phone is through AT&T. And it pains me to say this, but it almost makes the Criterion channel obsolete.
Does it?
Because the Turner Classic Movies Archive on there has almost everything they have. And then it has a bunch of other stuff as well. Lots of other great content. Now, I love the Criterion channel because of all the special features and they have the Criterion editions on there for streaming as well. So there's a lot of extra stuff that still, I think, validates its cost. But, man, HBO Max has a lot of stuff. Well, specifically that Turner Classic Movies substation or subchannel there is quite the thing. B, what's going on over there in the UK? I know you don't get the Criterion channel, if I'm correct, right? But is there some kind of prestige movie streaming service?
Good question. Well, unfortunately, it doesn't look like we're going to be getting HBO Max here in the UK. The one that I use mostly is the BFI player, which I get through Amazon Prime, which is good because there's quite a lot of British films on there. But there is also they have seasons which they run. So at the moment they're sort of have a season dedicated to Japanese cinema, which is really interesting because I haven't really watched all that much Japanese cinema, which there is no excuse now. I should really be catching up on that. But at the same time, I do wish there was more options. It feels kind of I'm always a little bit frustrated that there isn't something, a service dedicated to solely older films, because that's what I prefer watching. There are a few different ones that you can get. Shudder is quite good for horror, and there is the Sundance channel that you can get through Amazon Prime, and the MGM as well, which do have a few decent films on there. But at the same time, you've got to subscribe to so many different ones just to get a good collection. It just feels a bit, kind of pointless and a waste of money. I'm just dealing with the BFI player at the moment, which has been quite a good one. There's loads on there to catch up on. So
yeah, the market is entirely oversaturated with streaming services, unfortunately, at this point. So that it is. But your Netflix, I think, is a little better because I think we have more services here. So because I have a VPN, so I can kind of see the films that are on the Netflix in other countries, and you guys have a lot more. How do I describe it? Kind of first run content than we do on our Netflix. You're able to get a bunch of different theatrical stuff that we have to kind of explore all the streaming services to kind of track everything down. We have so much here. So sometimes, like you said, it'd be nice if everything could be in one kind of centralized location. But alas, no. All right. So kids, it was fun. we got to spend a few minutes talking about Never Rarely, Sometimes Always, the best film so far of 2020. We had a rather engaging discussion and fun talk about stuff coming out in physical media. But with all the sugar, sometimes you have to take your medicine. So we will collectively now spend a few minutes talking about The Last Thing He Wanted right after this.
So, you do this every day. Same blind sacks of suit and tie shits, blowing hot air up each other's assholes, and you gotta sit there and take notes. Don't know how you manage, Ellie.
Well, that must have been something you lost out on observing once you left.
That's not fair.
Nope. Let me fill you in. How do I manage? Let's see. Well, first I managed to graduate high school after you walked out of Mom 20 years ago. Then I managed to stay at UNLV as long as I could afford it, seeing as how my long-lost father wouldn't tell me what to list as his profession on the financial aid application. What was it you told me when I finally tracked you down? Import, export? No. Supply chain. Let's see, what else? I managed to have a kid of my own. And I still know her, too, so that's an achievement. Breast cancer. Managed to get through that. So, anything else? Oh, yeah. Career, divorce, cross-country relocation. All in all, I'd say I've managed pretty well.
So that, I think, is just a shining example of how exceptionally, I think, bad and cliched kind of the script for this film is. When that scene played out, I'm like, all right, this is what we got. This is what we're getting, isn't it? So The Last Thing You Wanted is based on the book by Joan Didion of the same name, where a reporter played by Anne Hathaway, she's covering the 1984 re-election campaign of Ronald Reagan, and she has to care for her father, played by Willem Defoe, who is dying. And she has to then kind of take his position in this arms deal in Central America, and of course everything goes wrong. And then Ben Affleck's in it, though I'm not sure Ben Affleck knows he's in it. And then Rosie Perez pops up as well. Toby Jones comes out of nowhere for a reason. And I can't really explain to you what's happening in this thing half the time. I think that's the biggest problem, right? Is it is so convoluted. And for all I understand now, let me ask the room. B, have you read the book this is based on?
No, I have read a few of Joan Didion's books, mostly her essays, her collection of essays, which I really enjoy her sort of style of writing, but it's really hard to translate her work to the big screen.
Well, that was going to be my question about it. Because what I understand, her work can kind of be oddly structured and almost intangible. It's kind of, so it'd be difficult to translate. So now I'm wondering, do you think, B, that with Dee Rees, what she does with this film is she does her best to translate it to the big film, but is just defeated by the fact that the work just may not be adaptable?
Yeah, I wondered whether this film would have been better suited for a mini-series. Because of there's so much to do with the story that's going on, and there's so many characters involved, and so many different elements that make up this film that I just didn't feel like it had even scraped the surface of what the story was about, or the potential of the story, and the world, and the time and the era that it was set in. It just felt. In my sort of little mini review I wrote on Letterboxd, I said, for a film with so much going on, I've never been so bored or uninterested in any of the characters. Like, you just didn't know anything about the characters at all. There was no setup of who these people were. I mean, Ben Affleck, like you say, what was he doing there? It was like he just walked onto set. And I felt so sorry for Toby Jones as well.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, too, because it throws a lot of exposition and information at you, right? But then it never feels like enough, because the film, I could never really wrap my hands around what exactly is happening in a particular moment, which is, I think, disappointing, because I think that this particular time and what this film is trying to address, I think deserves some criticism, or at least a more, I don't know, I want to say competent, but maybe just cohesive and understandable exercise. I think that it's a subject matter that could use some examination, but this thing is so ethereal that I just can't really ever grasp exactly what the message is and what we're trying to say. Matt, what do you think?
Yeah. Okay, so first off, I'm watching this thing, and it's so incredibly dull that my mind starts to wander. I'm in my house, my daughter is at my parents' house. I'm by myself. I'm sitting there, and like literally, I find myself like kind of drifting away from the TV while this thing's running, and which is a death sentence for this type of film, because I come and watch, and I'm sitting there and watching this thing, and I'm like, wait, is that a big deal? Like, who the hell is this guy? I don't even understand. Affleck doesn't even look like a human, like a person. Like, they look like they got like a Ben Affleck mask and like stuffed it like with an animatronic and then like threw it up there, because he is so lifeless in this film. Just everything about it is just terrible. The performances are terrible out of a bunch of really good actors for the most part. It's criminally boring, which at the end of the day, if you remove the fact that this is about the Iran-Contra scandal, that this should be pretty easy to make exciting. This is basically a espionage plot kind of potboiler film, which we've seen 100 times. The fact that this thing is based extremely loosely on a real-life event is completely unnecessary. And I don't understand, even if, and I'm not familiar with Joan Didion's work in general or this book in particular, I don't understand how it would be that difficult to take the bones of that and make it into something that's compelling. And I don't know where the failing lies, but really this thing is completely sunk by just how boring and incomprehensible. I'm glad to see, as I'm watching this thing, as I try and go into these things as cold as possible. I'm like, this is terrible. Is it me? Am I just dumb? Am I not like catching? Why am I not following this? And then I look it up, and it's like, oh, it's got a 5% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's not just me. This thing really is that stupid. So, and then of course I sent you the message saying, out of things with the Five Bloods being available, this is what we select to watch. Thank you, Chris.
Well, we're doing the Five Bloods next week. That's all.
We could have moved it up.
Either way. Yeah, no, I agree. Sometimes it feels like it's trying to be self-important, and it's so overwrought while failing to be, as we said, even interesting or comprehensible. And there are like moments where the music swells, right? We're going to have some big dramatic reveal, but it falls flat like immediately. Like let's introduce the daughter every now and then so we can add some personal drama and some stakes to it in that end as well. It's just just a mess. And
can I just say that ending where she's like falling into the sea, I was laughing so hard. I actually eye rolled, and I was just like, really? This is 2020 and we're doing stuff like this?
Mm-hmm.
It felt like something out of a bad, VHS, straight to video Steven Seagal movie or something.
Yeah. I mean, in the voiceover, just the ending voiceover, or like when like something important happens, it like flashes back to Anne Hathaway mentioning something in the kind of mishmash of voices. It's like, oh my God, this is such a tired trope. Come on, man. You're better than this. All of you are better than this.
I just keep wondering if Rees is trying to capture the essence of the novel, but by successfully doing so, and that it ends up being this mess. And so, like you said, Matt, it may be best to take the bones of that story and try and tell a more compelling and interesting narrative.
Yeah. It doesn't fill me with confidence for Dune, that's for sure. It makes me nervous.
Any parting thoughts? Any parting shots? Anything you want to mention about the last thing he wanted? Avoid the puns if you can.
Well, I was just going to say, was it just me, or was the audio completely off with that movie? Like, people just felt like they were mumbling their lines all the time.
Yeah.
I had to go back a couple of times to try and see if I could work out what they were saying. And it's just, when a movie is that I mean, it looks great. It looks really flashy on screen, but it's like, did they not use a mic boom? Did they just use the, an onboard camera mic to record the sound? What was going on there?
Seriously, yeah, I get that. I mean, it's like they went up to Affleck, like Rees' direction to Affleck was mumble as incoherently as you can possibly be, and I'm gonna try and catch it up as possible. Like that scene where they're in bed, I'm like, I can't. What are they even saying to each other? Like, I don't. Like they said, I thought you were the one. I'm like, wait, is that her ex-husband? Like, I don't understand what's going on right now. But yeah, I'm completely with you. But at the other time, obviously what we did here was not that great, so I thought we missed that much.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Fair enough. Well, I'm happy that I was able to waste Matt's time with this. He had already viewed it, so I take no responsibility for that, except maybe bringing up past trauma of having to relive your thoughts about this film again. I ended up giving The Last Thing He Wanted a D for bad.
D for bad.
What about you, B? What grade are you giving the Last Thing You Wanted?
I really don't want to give it a grade because
incomplete.
E? Can I give it E?
Sure.
Is it E? Because it just doesn't feel even worthy of giving it a grade, because if it was given to me, submitted to me, and I was a teacher, I would give it back to them and tell them to do it all over again.
Good start. Needs work.
Yeah, I initially had an F, but then I thought, well, if Rees is trying to capture the feel of the novel, then it's a failed attempt at an artistic spy thriller. So then I'll give you the D on that. So I'm being very charitable, I think, on my end.
Far too charitable.
Yeah, very charitable. Way too charitable, yeah.
Matt?
I'm going to give it the F, because if you have to rely on the possibility that your film is based off of a book that I didn't read and I'm not going to go read after this, that's not good enough for me. So I'm going to give it an F. I think my first one of the year. Is it my first one of the year?
It may be. I have to check the report card.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you've had a chance to see The Last Thing He Wanted and you want to commiserate with us, shoot us an email at feedback@thefirstrun.com. The film is currently streaming on Netflix. So next up, we're going to spend a few minutes talking about our 5 favorite films with a message that were released between 2010 and 2019. I vacillated back and forth. My list, being Matt, has changed 7-8 times in the last 2 hours alone. So we'll see what I end up with, even as we go. So let's hear a clip.
Fonnie had been walking down Lenox Avenue when he ran into Daniel. Fonnie! Time had not improved Daniel. He was still big, black, and loud. At the age of 28, a little older than Fonnie, but he was already running out of familiar faces. So they grabbed each other on the avenue.
What's happening, baby? Why you asking me, man? Oh, because like the man said about Mount Everest, you there. Come on. What's going on with these threads, though, man? I'm out here looking for a job, man. I can dig it, man. All right. Yeah. Hey, come on back to the pad. We'll get some beer. Tissue fixes something.
And though he certainly shouldn't be spending the money, he pushes Daniel into a cab and they roll on down to Bank Street, where I am not expecting them. But I cannot be indifferent to Daniel, because I realized from Fonnie's face how marvelous it was for him to have scooped up from the swamp waters of his past an old friend.
That, of course, is a clip from If Beale Street Could Talk, another episode of another film of seconds. Right, this is my second favorite film of 2018, right behind The Favorite. Barry Jenkins' adaptation of James Baldwin's novel is beautiful, heartbreaking, and when I just hear the score for this thing, I actually almost start to cry. So, but yeah, we'll spend a few minutes talking maybe about If Beale Street Could Talk too, because I said my list, even at this moment, is in flux. So, Matt, why don't you start everything off, and then we'll go over to we'll let's do this. Matt, you start, I'll go, and then we'll give B the ultimate number 1. Okay.
All right.
So,
sounds good.
What's your number 5?
So my number 5 is The Dallas Buyers Club. It came out in 2013, stars Matthew McConaughey as Juan Woodruff, an AIDS patient diagnosed with HIV/AIDS. in the 80s when there was a lack of treatment and there was a massive stigma where it was still viewed as a solely disease of gay men. Basically, he takes on trying to get treatment for people who are facing the disease and working through that community. It really shines a light on what things were like as far as AIDS and the kind of stigma around it and the lack of information around it, especially around that time, which I remember quite well, back in the mid to late 80s, even as a kid back then.
Yeah, no, McConaughey is just fantastic. That was part of the McConaissance, right?
Yeah.
And Mud, and Jared Leto, of course, winning an Academy Award. B, did you ever get a chance to see the Dallas Buyers Club?
Yes, yeah, I do like that film, although I do have some problems with it, but that's mostly to do with Jared Leto, really, as being in a role of a sort of playing a transgendered character. But I think the film is very well done, and Matthew McConaughey delivers a great performance.
So my number 5 then is Lee Chang-dong's Burning, the South Korean import that came out in, was that 2018? Yeah, 2018, starring Steve Yeun as well as Yoo Ha-in and Jeon Jin-sao. It's basically a film about a love triangle that develops between 3 people, and then we deal with toxic masculinity, class jealousy, right? A very slow burn, if I may, of a film, but with some absolutely beautiful, stunning camera work, and with a particularly great performance by Yoon, and also the use of Miles Davis's, why am I blanking on it now? His music from Elevator to the Gallows. There's that one, is it Magnifique? I can't remember now. I apologize, folks. But this one scene where she's dancing, right, as the sun's going down, and then the Davis's trumpet swells up. But really, just as I said, a slow burn of a film, but it is well worth your time if you haven't seen it. Burning is fantastic. B, what you got number 5?
So I'm going with Sean Baker's The Florida Project from 2017. Those who don't really know, The Florida Project is about a 6-year-old girl. Her name is called Mooney, played by the wonderful Brooklyn Prince, and she sort of lives with her mother, her single mother, and in a motel in Florida. And it's all sort of to do with her and her friends who are from like a poorer background. I think what I love about the movie is the fact that it shows us a side of life that we don't really see depicted on screen that often. We don't see the lives of, they're not really the working class, they're sort of below that, the poverty class, I guess, and their sort of struggles. But it's not really a film that's heavy going. There's some moments of really wonderful lightheartedness, and the children who act in this movie are just wonderful. It gets me every time I watch it. One of my favorite films of 2017.
There you are. See, Matt? See? I had to drag Matt to have him see the Florida Project.
It's a game I like to play with Chris just to see how long I can infuriate him doing it. He's got several films that I know what I would like. I would just refuse to watch. And actually, that's a really good pick. I forgot about the Florida Project, so I actually probably would put that somewhere on my list. We'll see. But yeah, it's a good pick. I'm sorry I missed it.
All right, Matt, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is Black Klansman, the last film from Spike Lee. Came out in 2018. Is based on the story of Ron Stallworth, an African-American detective who tries to infiltrate the Ku Klux Klan and does so successfully with the help of a Jewish detective. The way Spike Lee kind of lays it all out, especially with just the kind of what's the word I'm looking for? I guess the banality of evil with just the way the Klansmen are portrayed is hilarious, but at the same time just really sheds a light on how bad things are and continue to be in the United States as far as race relations go. Because having lived in the southern United States, I can tell you this is not that far off even from relatively recent, so and it still continues today. So it's a good film with some laughs in it, but it's also a good message, powerful indictment of what it's like in the South right now.
Excellent. Yeah, no, we're big fans of the Black Klansman around here. B. You know what it is? It's my wife. That's one of my nicknames for her. It's a abbreviation of Sweet Pea. Is that a little too much information? That's too much information.
It is. It's a little much. Keep going.
B, you a Black Klansman fan? Have you had a chance to check out Spike Lee's film?
It's on my list, but
Nice.
I won't tell you which position it is
I'm
in
gonna
yet.
I'm gonna shut up now. I'm gonna stop setting you up then, because I don't want you to spoil anything. All right. So number 4 for me is Ryan Coogler's debut feature, and that's Fruitvale Station, the story of Oscar Grant, and who's a gentleman who was shot and killed at the Fruitvale Station as part of the Bay Area Rapid Transit system. After things go horribly awry. It is a exceptionally intimate and tenderly told tale, and it helps kind of demystify or just outright show the lies of the thug, not mentality, but right, the sign that that the people who get shot by the police tend to have been doing something wrong. He gets involved in there is a kerfuffle, a fight up at the station. The cops come in and things go horribly wrong. But the whole film, leading up to that tragic moment, runs us through Oscar's day. We meet his daughter, his girlfriend, everything. He loses his job, his friendships, all of this stuff, his family, all of this stuff leading towards the inevitable end, his tragic end at this film. And it is... for a debut feature, too, for Ryan Coogler, who, of course, maybe the masses may know as the director of Black Panther, but to see this thing right out of the gate, it's really a heart-wrenching film, and if you haven't seen it, you need to check it out. Fruitvale Station is my number 4. Go ahead there and B. What's your number 4?
So my number 4 is the 2013 film Short Term 12,
Yes.
starring the wonderful Brie Larson. This is a film that sort of follows Brie Larson as the character of Grace, who's a sort of compassionate young supervisor at a foster care facility where she helps at-risk teens. And I think this film really sort of shows the issues that both those in care and those who work with children who are in care have to face. I think it's one of those films that just is very hard to watch, but at the same time you're left with so much to take away from it, and I really enjoyed this was a film that sort of really put Brie Larson on the map, and she delivers a great performance.
Yeah, we have mountains of praise for Short Term 12 around here. We mention it every time we possibly can. It's in our canon, I think, right, as a first-run favorite. That it is one of the best films in fact, we did on our 500th episode, like a top 10 of films we watched for the show, and this was right up there. I think this is my top 5. I mean, yeah, we love Short Term 12. I'm so glad you've seen it. Matt, 3.
All right. My number 3, again staying with 2018, is from a film that we just heard a clip from, If Beale Street Could Talk, filmed by Barry Jenkins. Follows a young woman who seeks to clear the name of her wrongly charged lover and prove his innocence before the birth of their child. It's a small, personal film that I really connected with. Just the kind of the love and the forces trying to pull these two apart, whether they're familial or societal or authoritarian, is just kind of the things that are kind of put up against these two. And really, it's just a fascinating watch from beginning to end.
Yeah, no, yeah. Okay, that's good.
What's your number 1?
No, it's not, but it's been... Well, okay. So my number 3 at the moment, I just made this... I think I just made this change. I just shifted it around again. I can't believe how difficult this list has been for me. So my number 3 is Jordan Peele's Get Out. The searing indictment of racism and just the white obsession with the possession of black bodies, right? Relevant and then just as relevant and thought-provoking as it is scary. And even to this day, right? Just this obsession where it's okay and acceptable for black bodies in regards to entertainment purposes for us, right? I mean, Spike Lee's Bamboozled really tackled that exceptionally well. So, but Get Out, Jordan Peele is able to capture in this oftentimes hilarious and terrifying film while making one of the most searing and just thoughtful indictments of the subject matter I can recall in the last few years. And it just, how wonderfully the whole thing works just blows my mind. So that's my number 3, Get Out.
That's a good pick. I do love that movie. I wish I'd picked it. It's so hard to come up with this list.
Yeah, indeed. What do you got for number 3?
So my number 3 is Sorry to Bother You, a film that came out in 2018, and I like Get Out. It is it's a bit of, this is more of a comedy than Get Out, but there are some sort of surreal horror elements to this movie. I know it was a film that sort of was quite divisive when it came out, but Boots Riley is a really interesting filmmaker because he uses, so he had a career, I believe, as a hip hop artist and rapper, and it's sort of evolved into film, and his movies have such energy and life to them. And those who don't know, I mean, have you hopefully both seen Sorry to Bother You?
Yes.
But it's just one of those films that came out and you just didn't know what to expect. It was so weird, set in this sort of alternate world where a man discovers like the magical key to sort of success is to adopt a white voice when he's doing telemarketing. And it's just such a really interesting companion piece to go with Get Out, because they're sort of dealing with the same themes. And I got to meet Boots Riley at the 2018 London Film Festival, and I was completely starstruck. I didn't know what to say or do, so I made a fool of myself. But yeah, so I had to put it on this list because it's just one of my favorite films of 2018.
No, that is a great pick. That ending, though, I still can't sometimes wrap my head around how he closes that thing out.
I love that ending. I love it. But I love surreal comedies. So, what can I say? I'm a weirdo.
No. Well, he certainly delivers that for you there.
Yeah, I really love that film. I was this close to putting it onto the list, but and as much as it just I think it just goes so off the rails at the end, and not in a bad way, but I think that kind of put it against it to putting it on my list. But I do love that film. I'm glad you picked it, so we could talk about it a little bit. All right, so my number 2 is Leave No Trace by Deborah Granick. Stars Ben Foster, who's a homeless veteran with PTSD, living in the forests around Portland, Oregon with his 13-year-old daughter. Really, this is a film that kind of just talks about, something that we don't really talk about a lot in the U.S., the kind of homeless problem, especially the homeless problem, and the mental health problems that our veterans have, and just PTSD or mental problems in general are not given much attention in this country. And it's really just about how this system that's set up to kind of help these people is really just broken and does more harm than good most of the time. And it's really how it's just an interesting look in the fact that this Ben Foster's character, just even though the kind of lip service help he's being given is not enough, and he just can't hold it together enough to keep his family together.
I'd forgotten all about that. No, that's a good one, Matt. Thanks for bringing that one up. And
her film Winter's Bone is also another classic, which is celebrating its 10-year anniversary this month, I believe.
Oh, wow.
That gave me a heart attack saying it was 20. I'm like,
I'm sorry for making people feel extra old.
Yes.
All right, my number 2 then. So here's the thing. I kept going back and forth with a twofer for this director, but it's a cheat. So then I went with another film. But Matt already mentioned one. one of the two films, so I'm just going to go with the other one, just for the hell of it. Okay. So I'm going to go with Barry Jenkins' adaptation of Terrell Alvin McCraney's play, Moonlight. The story of Chiron, a young boy who is... Well, it casts him... We catch him in three different points in his life, right? Basically, this young man trying to accept who he is in a culture that has a very specifically defined perception of what black masculinity is, and also kind of dealing with who he is and his sexuality with an almost entirely absentee, if not abusive family, taken in by a drug dealer to try and teach him to understand and accept who he is and love himself. And then we fast forward later on too, when he's an adult and he reconnects with the man who he as a young boy, as a teenager, he kind of had his first awakening, his first sexual experience with, and how he eventually kind of breaks down. And it's another fantastic score by Nicholas Britell, or is it Britell? I gotta nail that down. Who gave us the one for If Beale Street Could Talk. But Jenkins is Moonlight, which of course was not controversial in a way it shouldn't have won, but how it unfolded in the Oscars, winning Best Picture that year. Just a beautiful film about just dealing with one's sexuality in an environment that is not welcoming of it at all. And some really fantastic performances, beautifully shot, just an all-around fantastic and stunning film. So Moonlight's my number 2 then.
That's such a beautiful film, and I was just, when you were describing it, I could feel myself getting tearful, just recalling the movie. I wish I'd put that on my list. My next film I was going to go with Parasite, but I actually went with Bong Joon-ho's Snowpiercer from 2013, because unlike the other movies on this list, I think it's set in the future, but it's kind of a warning of what could happen if we can continue with our selfishness of act of destroying this planet. But it's also an interesting movie because it deals with the flawed class system as well. For all those who don't know what Snowpiercer is, well, it takes place on a train where the passengers, sort of those who are rich, are in the first class carriages, and those who are poor, well, you're stuffed way into the back. And it's all about a rebellion led by Chris Evans, Captain America himself. And it's a great film. There's so many wonderful actors in there. You've got Eda Harris, John Hurt, Tilda Swinton, Jamie Bell, Octavia Spencer's in this movie. So it's a great film. And well, I haven't seen the TV series that they've made, but from what I've heard, it's not all that great. So if you're going to watch anything, watch the original film.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either. I wanted to because I do love Snowpiercer, but I think it's like a police procedural on the train, which I'm assuming they must work in the other elements. At least I hope they do. I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm just giving that one a pass. I was like, no thanks.
Fair enough. All right, Matt, let's close it out. Start our number ones.
All right, so my number 1 is my favorite film of last year, which is The Last Black Man in San Francisco. Really about gentrification in American cities, about how the working class, blue-collar workers of the city, they get kind of pushed out by new money. They have no place to go. And it really centers around a young man who is fixated on reclaiming his childhood home that was a dilapidated Victorian that's now owned by an older white couple, and has turned it into this, incredibly expensive thing, as all homes in San Francisco are. And it's really about, his family and his friends kind of where's their place in this kind of changing city that's no longer their home.
God, I love Last Black Man in San Francisco. Criminally under promoted by A24. I don't quite understand that at all. Is it still available on Prime? I think it was for a while.
I think it is. Yeah, I'll check.
So, but
as you guys talk.
Yeah, an honorable mention for me too. That was in and out of my list as well. I adore that film. It's this almost dreamlike lyrical quality to it. It's fantastic.
It is. It's still available on Prime.
Okay, good. Check it out if you haven't seen it. My number one then is, I guess, I'm gonna be the lazy guy. I'm gonna give you the layup, and that of course is Bong Joon-ho's Parasite. It's his case study on class, late stage capitalism, and even what it means to be human in a world becoming more and more split by inequality. Just the technical marvel of this film, but also the heart and warmth. It is beautifully shot. It really a stunning work of art. Parasite. That's the thing too, right? Most of Joon-ho's films deal with a lot of different kind of social issues, right? You got The Host, Mother, Snowpiercer, as you say, Okja. All of his films, even Memories of a Murder, have these kind of underlying messages that are exceptionally powerful. He's probably one of the best storytellers I think we have working today. And Parasite deserves all the praise it's been getting. So if you haven't seen it, obviously check it out ASAP. B, this is it.
I'm so glad that you mentioned Parasite, because I was like, it was either that or Snowpiercer for me.
So we got you covered. Take us home. What is the best film, movie with a message?
Well, it's already been mentioned. It's I picked Black Klansman because I find that film so. I just remember watching it and just being so struck by it. Solely for its ending. It was just so impactful and left me in this sort of state of shell shock because things really haven't changed all that much since the 1970s where the film takes place, and it really brought it to the forefront for me of how little things have changed, and it really felt frustrating that movie didn't win at the Oscars for Best Picture like it should have done. And I think Spike Lee is such a interesting filmmaker because he is willing to put these messages out. I don't think Black Klansman is his best film. I still think that's it's so hard to say when you say his movies because there are so many that come to mind, but he's just one of those filmmakers that just he came out with Do the Right Thing in 1989, and that is such a important, relevant movie today. Of course, we're not picking movies from 1980s, we're picking movies from this, the decade just gone, so that's why I've gone with Black Klansman. But yeah, I just found it such a impactful movie, and I'm glad that it got mentioned here by both of you. So, but I just knew that when I was doing this list, it had to be my number one.
I totally understand that. It is a fantastic film. I've had an itch to rewatch it too lately. In fact, you know what I'm making up for? I'm about, quarter of the way through because I've never seen it. I'm embarrassed to say is Malcolm X. I just started watching that this week, and Delroy Lindo, who is quite good in that, and of course, from what I understand, is absolutely fantastic in The Five Bloods. So, that is obviously a great pick. Nicely done. B, any honorable mentions? Anything you wanted to bring up that didn't quite make the list?
Well, obviously Parasite was a film that I did toy with whether to put it on this list, but went with Snowpiercer. Another film that came out on Netflix this year, which I want to give a special mention to, is The Platform. I don't know if you have heard of that at all.
I've heard of it, yeah.
Which is a really interesting sort of take on human excess and commentary on class division. And is very similar in terms of its supernatural, futuristic dystopian take on society as Snowpiercer. So that was another film. Of course, If Beale Street Talk as well, and Moonlight were also two films I wanted to mention. And I did also want to give a special mention to Portrait of a Lady on Fire, because even though that's set in a period setting, I still think it has a lot to say about treatment of those who fall in love with the same sex. I think there's a lot to sort of apply to that film with certain aspects of society today.
Yeah, that is true. Matt, any honorables?
Yeah, I think I've already talked about both of them. I am going to steal The Florida Project because it's an excellent pick that I wish I had thought of, but I didn't. And then Sorry to Bother You, like I said, it was very, very close to making the cut, but didn't quite make it there, even though I do adore it.
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of what everybody said here, and stuff that didn't get mentioned yet so far. 12 Years a Slave. It's too easy to say that, it was in the past, right? Why can't we get over slavery? But when you see the raw depiction of it, presented so starkly and that film, it probably would have been in my top 5, and I want to revisit it, but part of me thinks it's just too intense. I don't know. But Steve McQueen's 12 Years a Slave is fantastic. Talked about Snowpiercer, The Host. You know what, Matt? He's going to hate me for this. Anna Biller's The Love Witch, which I love. Some feminist films I have. We have that, Little Lady Bird, last year's Little Women, Portrait of a Lady on Fire as well. And even though it's a little clumsy, I am a fan of Assassination Nation. What else we got there? The Lobster. And then what else we haven't mentioned? Tangerine, Sean Baker's film that he shot like on a phone, which is quite good. If you haven't seen Tangerine, I think it may still be on Netflix. I'm not sure. About some trans women, and one of them who basically goes to hunt down her pimp after she finds out that he's cheated on her. And then, of course, Daveed Diggs co-writes and stars in Blind Spotting, which is at times often hilarious but terrifying and enraging, with an absolute guttural, heart-wrenching finale. If you haven't seen Blind Spotting, it is well worth your time. Fantastic. Well, what do you people think? Shoot us an email, feedback@thefirstrun.com. What films make your list? Disagree or agree with any of our picks? We'd love to hear from you. Next week, Matt, it's The Five Bloods and then the Russo brothers' Extraction. We're supposed to have a guest next week as well, so we'll see how that... the guests keep on coming. Hopefully we'll treat them better than we did B this morning. Good Lord, Chris. Get your S together. B, let's get some plugs, and where can people find you?
Of course, yeah. So you can find me at The Film Bee on Twitter. You can also find me over at In Their Own League. You can follow In Their Own League at Their League. That's THEIR. Their different spelling. And you can find a lot of my work at Next Best Picture, also In Session Film, and various other places. I just pop up like Babadook or something.
Good Lord. Well, thank you so much for joining us this week. We were very excited to have you. Hopefully we can have you on again sometime.
Of course. I'd love to join you guys again. I really loved the discussion. Even the discussion about Last Thing He Wanted was far more enjoyable than the actual movie.
Well, thank you very much. As always, you can check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Do a search for The First Run. Scroll. Eventually you will find us. Go over to Apple Podcasts and give us a review. We'll read it on the air, and it'll help other people find the show. So that's going to be it for this week. We're going to go ahead and take an extended break, and we will see you all soon. Take care.
By the way, I would have voted for Obama for a third term if I could.